President Trump hitting the campaign trail in Ohio over the weekend and predicting a possible red wave in the midterms. This comes ahead of a hotly contested special election in the Buckeye State's 12th district tomorrow.
They're talking about this blue wave. I don't think so. You win and you're a little complacent, but I mean, that was 2 years ago. So I just said, why? But we have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have things that have never happened before. And look, if the Democrats get in, they're going to raise your taxes. You're going to have crime all over the place. You're going to have people pouring across the border. So why would that be a blue wave? I think it could be a red wave.
The economy is a big plus for the president. The 3.9% unemployment rate is the lowest for a July of a midterm year since 1966. Meanwhile, Democrats are taking a different approach. Senator Kamala Harris is speaking out against the use of this political phrase.
I have a problem, guys, with that phrase, identity politics. Because let's be clear, when people say that, it's a pejorative. That phrase is used to divide and it is used to distract. Its purpose is to minimize and marginalize issues that impact all of us. It is used to try and shut us up.
All right, Greg, I'm going to have to go to you on that because you talk a lot about identity politics and how that helps divide the country. And she's saying it's actually, if you say that, then you're being divisive.
Well, that was a very powerful, I mean, if you agree with her, she's very persuasive. I have to say she's a strong speaker. I do disagree with everything she's saying, but I have to say that the way she said it was pretty strong. Identity politics used to be a rallying cry for the left. It was a positive thing. Now when you mention it, it's an insult.
Right.
And the reason is because ultimately the consequences of identity politics is putting the group before the individual. And what happens is everybody who are in their specific groups then have to feel that their group is somehow more important than the other group. So what you end up having are warring factions. And you're seeing it a lot of times where one group accuses another group of cultural appropriation, and then another group accuses that group of something else. Ultimately, it's going to turn on itself. This is why Trump won, was because he was talking about one identity politic, which was American. Now, then you have the left saying, no, that's racist, because what you're really saying is white when you're talking about America. That's the consequence of identity politics, is what they're saying is that if you are white, you are part of the oppressor group. And it's the identity. And so when you say identity politics, you're obviously racist. So that's, nothing good can come from identity politics, because in its heart, it's about division.
Tammy, welcome to The Five.
Thank you. Pleasure
it was
to be here.
quite a different message, right? So President Trump's at a rally. That's a different scene for him. He loves it. He's into the crowd. Can you contrast that with Kamala Harris, who was giving a speech at Netroots Nation? What do you think about the way that they're both setting things up?
Well, her attempt to retreat from identity politics, which they've relied on for decades, tells you that they've noticed it's not working. They've seen something internally that tells them, we've got to stop this. And actually, an Independent Women's Voice, which on the President and McLaughlin survey, shows that 85% of people don't care, as an example, about gender. They're not going to base their vote on gender. And yet that's what all of 2016 was, really. Vote for Hillary, it'll be the first woman president. Or vote for this person, it'll be the first of this thing or the other thing. Americans are not caring because they've realized that that's false. It doesn't work. So her position is, well, this is now not working. We've relied on this. Let's retreat a bit. The president just being consistent. It was what the campaign was. We're all in this together. The numbers prove that's correct. All of the unemployment numbers we know, of course, are extraordinary now. That everyone's boat has been lifted. It's the thing that he promised. And it's based on all of us actually not seeing each other differently, but seeing each other as a neighbor. That's what resonates with the American people, and that's why it's working.
Richard, I imagine you disagree. I'll give you the floor. You can tell us why.
Don't give him the floor. Just give him the table.
Okay, the table.
I'll take the floor and the table for $200, Alex. So here's my take on this. Here's what I think what Senator Harris was trying to say there, and she said it very eloquently, is this. When you fix an issue that's, for example, plaguing the African-American community, you help all Americans. When you properly fund public education, you help all Americans. When you fix our broken immigration system, you help all Americans. When you make sure that everybody has the right to vote without disenfranchisement, you help all Americans. So it's not identity politics. Make sure that America works for everybody, no matter their color, no matter their race, no matter their sexuality, no matter their zip code. And I think that's the fight that Democrats are having.
Don't you think that's
Sounds like Donald Trump.
Yeah, was going to say.
No, I think it's completely different from Donald Trump. I think what we have in the White House is a president who won't even acknowledge that Pride Month is a thing, and we're still fighting for LGBTQ rights, right? You have a president in the White House
who also accepted gay marriage before Obama did.
But you also have a president in the White House who gets in fights with NFL players or gets in fights with LeBron James because he opened up a school.
He also gets in fights with Hillary Clinton. He gets in fights with everybody. He gets in fights with Rosie O'Donnell.
That doesn't hurt any particular group if he's fighting with somebody.
Well, I think if you talk to the African American community, they would say when you pick on LeBron James for opening a school in Akron, Ohio, you're picking on the entire African American community.
And he didn't pick on him because he opened up a school. He picked on him because LeBron James picked on Donald Trump, and that's does that with everybody.
And also, it was to make fun of Don Lemon. It was about Don Lemon.
He's supposed to be above this.
Well,
he's the leader of the free world.
We know Trump doesn't take the high road. He gets in the dirt and he fights it out.
Just say it.
Okay, but you should be used to it. It's 2 years going on 8. So I think the identity politics thing is they're looking for differences, as Tammy said, instead of everything that unites us. And the Democratic Party, they have coalitions. And they group these coalitions together for electoral victories based on their identity. And what they do is they have these groups, and they say, these groups have grievances. And we are going to correct those grievances. We are going to right those wrongs or right those injustices. And we're going to take and use the government to do that by redistributing wealth and benefits. But what they do is they say everything that's wrong, that's plaguing these identity groups, is the fault of Republicans. It's not the group's fault. It's not the economy's fault. It's not something that has nothing to do with Republicans. It's all the Republicans' fault. So they demonize the Republicans and create a war. There's a war on women. There's a war on minorities. There's a war on Muslims. And a lot of Republicans don't go out every day and wake up, eat breakfast, and say, how can I wage war on other people in this country? They go to work, they get their money, and they don't want the government to keep all of it.
Can I play a couple of pieces of sound for you and control room? I'm going to ask you to play these thoughts back to back. One is a Senate candidate, a Republican Senate candidate in Michigan. That primary election is tomorrow. And the other is from, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was in the same state of Michigan campaigning for somebody else over the weekend.
I don't have a black message. I don't have a white message. I have a red, white, and blue message. I have a message of everybody achieving the American dream.
We can say that a Muslim man can be the first governor, that can be the first Muslim governor in this country, in the Midwest. And we don't have to be afraid of some other that won't vote for him, because we know that 10 years ago they voted for a man named Barack Hussein Obama.
Tammy, your thoughts on that?
Look, and she uses it right there. She says some other. Casting immediately everyone else as the other. Now, look, this is why it's not working and why Senator Harris is troubled. The Harvard-Harris poll showed a 10-point boost of approval for the president by Hispanics.
Yep.
And Rasmussen is showing last year the president was at 15% approval amongst African Americans. Today, he's at 29%. So you're looking at a trajectory where groups that have been protected are saying, wait a minute. We are the same. The money is the same. The amount of money that we're getting from the tax cuts. We've got a job that's actually not delivering pizza. It's actually a real good professional job.
When have African Americans been protected? I mean, we're getting shot in the street by police with no accountability. Where are we being protected?
I think.
Well, that's the C block, Richard.
And that's not true, by the way. There's a lot of accountability.
Right.
Eric Garner was choked to death.
Why don't you look at the research? Look at the research. Look at the research of who's doing the shooting, Richard.
We'll get a chance.
You can slip that in, but
very good example right now with those numbers for African Americans. We immediately go to fear and victimhood. That's what we're rejecting.
Oh, because I'm very fearful when I get pulled over by the police. I'm very fearful.
All right. So here's the bottom line. We're talking about identity politics. Let's say you want to have a discussion with somebody about identity politics, and you say, I'm willing to listen to you, and I want to know, and I agree with you. What do you get? You don't get the answer because it's never enough. The idea of identity politics is that as you are the oppressor and they are the oppressed, so there's actually no end in sight. So if you say, will you take our help? I would like to help you with this. That will not be enough. If you see any public disturbance between either with Antifa or activists, these are people who are not interested in the discussion. All right? So that's why people say when they were talking about identity politics, they can't have a discussion because it never ends. They're never happy. The identity politics is not about solutions. All right? It's about undoing civilization,
Greg,
and especially in capitalism
but
in America.
Antifa's a red herring because that's the same argument we made about the KKK. They're not trying to have a discussion with me about how to be less racist.
I agree with you there.
So
Antifa is like the KKK.
But if
that's not a red herring.
If you talk to everyday African Americans, they would say, or you talk to everyday brown folks, they would say, high-quality neighborhood public schools, investments in our community, opportunities in our community.
Every American says that.
Exactly,
Every
and that's what we're fighting, and we're still fighting for that in the
Yep.
African American community.
Everybody's fighting for it.
We're all fighting for it.
Let's get Jesse.
Let's
I want
fight
to
for
ask
it
Jesse
together.
one last thing, which is that President Trump, he has a way of basically disrupting everything. So you have Republicans across the country trying to lower expectations going into Ohio 12 tomorrow, so that they could hopefully beat expectation. He says he's just. Forget all that. He's raising expectations and expecting a red wave in November.
They need a red wall because it shouldn't be this close here in Ohio. This is a district that they've won, the Republicans, I think, for decades, going back to the 30s. Now it's tied. The Democrats running away from Nancy Pelosi. He's keeping it on kitchen table issues, education costs and health care costs. And he doesn't even really mention Donald Trump that much. The Republican is a little bit older, not as charismatic. So he's got a little personality problem there. And now the national media is coming in big time. They started going positive and touting the president's success. And now they're just smearing this Democrat. They're linking him to Elizabeth Warren, calling her Pocahontas. They're going dirty late, so that means they're worried about it. But I think the Republican's going to hang on. But if the Democrat does win, it's going to give the Democrats a lot of momentum going into the midterms.
And get this, no matter what happens tomorrow, they both run again against each other in November. So we'll be back talking about Ohio 12.